Greetings and welcome to the tutorial where I will show you how you can improve your frame rate in DayZ standalone. First, what you need to do is navigate to your Documents folder and into DayZ folder. Over here you will have two files that you have to edit. One is dayz.config and another one is your name.dayz profile. First, open up dayz.config. In this page you don't have much to do. You can only set few settings, although other settings can be changed in-game, which we'll go through later. From here, you can disable SSAO manually. Put this to 0. It will improve your frame rate. Also, pip quality, even though it doesn't work in this game, at least not for now, you can put it to 1, just for a small little CPU improvement. Put ATOC, or alpha to coverage, to 0. And put VSync to 0. Vertical synchronization is something that drags a lot of PCs down, especially if they have bad graphic card. HDR precision is usually about 8. You can put it to 4 or 2 or even 1. It will change some graphical fidelity of the game, making shadows, well, not shadows, just standard object shading a bit worse, but it will improve your frame rate, which is why we're doing this in the first place. Also, as for GPU max frames ahead and GPU detected frames ahead, as for these two, just put them to 1, and that will force your graphic card not to render next frames, which will make current frames load faster. Basically, you'll have more FPS. That's about it from this page. Now open up your name.dayz profile. On the upper piece, you don't have much to change because you can change most of these things in game itself. So just scroll down to about 400 lines. Disable mouse moving. This will not change your frame rate in any way, but at least it will make your mouse respond faster if you have problems with input delay like I do. Basically, it will stop smoothing the mouse so you can aim more precisely. As for max samples played, you can put this to 8 or 16. The default value is 32. This is basically how many sounds will be played at the same time. Reducing this will make your CPU run the game faster because it will have less sounds to play. It's a small improvement, but it's still pretty good. As for shading and shadow quality, put both to 0. It's the minimum shadow quality, which will again make your game run faster. But from GPU perspective, there will be less shadows to render. So then scroll down to the bottom. Over here you have also a few things you can change. Disable bloom, disable rotation blur. As for floating zone area, this is setting in game, it's basically a dead zone. As for shadow Z distance, most tutorials say that this should be set to 100 so you can render the shadows close to you. But as I said, if you have a bad PCU like I do, I'm not recording this on Intel 7 and GTX Titan like some people do to improve frame rate by their standards, which doesn't really make sense. But if you really have bad graphic cards like I do, just disable shadows completely. By making shadow Z distance to 0, there will be no shadows. Of course, there will still be shadows inside houses, but that's just general shading. As for view distance and preferred object view distance, this is the distance in meters on which you will be able to see objects. Putting this to 700 meters does indeed give a great deal of frame rates, as a lot less objects have to be rendered inside the frame. However, as it says itself, you basically won't be able to see anything past those 700 meters unless you look through a scope. So this is a kind of, it's a bit hard to explain. It's like, it comes at a risk, but if you want frame rates, it's something important that you should lower. As for terrain grid, you can put the terrain grid to 50. That's basically maximum terrain grid value that will improve your frame rate, even though it won't be actually seen in the game. The terrain will look the same, but it's still something you can do to improve frame rate. And that's about it from this page. Now we'll just go to Steam so you can change your launch parameters. That will improve your game a little bit. It won't do much, but it's still good to do. So just right click on your DayZ in your Steam library and go to Properties. In the General tab, click on Set Launch Options. Over here, as you can see, I have a lot of stuff that's already here. No pause will basically stop the game from pausing when you Alt-Tab. This is not pause like in single-player games. It basically means that the game will continue to render scenes even though you're not inside a game, which is actually good, because when you Alt-Tab back in the game, if you have bad PC, the whole scene will have to be re-rendered again. And by doing this, it will be a little faster. As for CPU count, that's how many processor cores you have. So if you have a quad core like I do, put 4. As for X threads, this basically means how many threads does your processor has. You should check that on your processor website. My AMD Athlon 2 has 7 threads, so I have to put 7. As for max memory, this is the maximum available memory that is available to your PC. In my case, since I have 6 GB, I have to put 6144. No splash will make the opening DayZ Bohemia splash not to show up, and skip intro makes the starting map disables starting map from loading. So basically your menu will be blank with blue background instead of actually loading your character and everything. To load a character, you have to basically go in game and out of the game, but you're not going to play DayZ just to go back to the menu, so you don't actually need this. So just put skip intro. And that's about it from Steam. So now we will go in game and I will show you more settings there. Okay, so we're in the game now, and as I said, skip intro will make the background look kind of like C. You still don't see your character, you can see your name and just play the game. So in here you should go to configure. As for these, you can just leave everything. Of course, field of view is something you should set for you to how you're used to. That doesn't change your frame rate one bit. So just go to video, and here put overall quality. Don't use any of these settings. Like, you should leave it to custom, because if you change any of these settings, all those changes we made to config file will be rendered useless. As for rendering resolution, I use 83% because I found it still viable to play, because you can still see everything, but there is some major improvement as far as FPS go. As for VSync, as I said, disable that, but we already disabled that through the game settings. Now go to quality, and over here, so objects should be kept in very low or low. Terrain should always be very low. Clouds should be disabled under every circumstance, because clouds are very GPU taxing. As for shadows, we already disabled that, so keep it disabled here as well. Now go to user interface. There's not much you can do. This is all basically just user interface settings. You should set this to how you like it. As for textures, video memory should always be put to auto. Don't use any of these pre-configured settings. Just always use auto settings, because it will change the textures regarding to how far away you are from them. As for texture detail and texture filtering, you can leave this to high, because they do not have any major CPU or GPU taxing. Although if you're running low on memory, you can put this to low or normal. Now for rendering, you should disable anti-aliasing. You should disable, well, most of these settings will be disabled automatically when you have anti-aliasing disabled. HDR quality should be put very low, and ambient occlusion and post-processing should be disabled at all cost. As we said already, bloom and rotation blur should be disabled as well. Now I'll just go in game. As you can see, you can see your character. I will just go in game to see if the frame rate, so you can basically see the changes we made. Now just join a low populated server and let's just wait for the game to load. Okay, so we are in the game now, and well, when I'm recording I'm getting a bit of lower frame rate, but without recording I'm getting a very stable, hold on a second, I'm getting very stable 30 to 40 FPS, and I'm here at the top of Berezino, as you can see. So I'm getting pretty good frame rate even when recording. I'm recording this now at 25 frames per second. There's very little input delay and the game is quite playable. As you can see, there are no shadows or anything, and everything in the scene still looks pretty okay, like manageable, so you can still see most of the things. This is basically my usual config for this game. And as you can see, you can still play the game quite well. As I said, the only drawback is that you don't really see much far out. So okay, basically that's it. I hope you liked the tutorial. I hope you learned something new, and now that you can run your DayZ game a little bit faster. Take care guys, and see you out there. Happy surviving.